The November rain hammered against the windows of the small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, matching the tension that filled the cramped living room. Marcus Chen sat hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table, his fingers frozen above the keyboard as his father's voice cut through the air like a blade. 28 years old, and what do you have to show for it? Richard Chen's words dripped with disappointment, his accent becoming thicker with emotion. Your cousin Jennifer is a doctor. Your brother David runs his own tech company. And you? You sit here playing with computers, chasing dreams that don't pay bills. Marcus's mother, Linda, nervously adjusted the throw pillows on the worn couch, her eyes darting between her husband and son. The small two-bedroom apartment felt even smaller when filled with this much disappointment. Family photos lined the walls. Marcus in his high school graduation cap, David receiving his MBA, Jennifer in her white coat, each image a reminder of paths taken and expectations met. I'm working on something important, Dad, Marcus said quietly, his voice barely audible over the rain. The cybersecurity program I'm developing could what? Richard interrupted, slamming his hand on the table. Could pay your student loans? Could get you out of this apartment? Could give you a family, a future? You've been saying could for 5 years since you left that good job at the bank. The laptop screen glowed with lines of code, a project Marcus had been pouring his soul into for the past 18 months. Late nights, skipped meals, declined invitations, all sacrificed for something his family couldn't understand. To them, it looked like failure. To him, it was purpose. Richard, please, Linda interjected softly, placing a hand on her husband's arm. He's trying. Trying isn't enough anymore, Richard said, shaking his head. When I came to this country, I worked 3 jobs. I didn't have time for dreams. I had responsibilities. Marcus felt the familiar knot in his stomach tighten. This conversation had played out countless times before, each iteration chipping away at his resolve. He glanced at the framed flag on his desk, a gift from his best friend Jake, who was currently deployed overseas. Jake understood sacrifice in ways his family never could. You know what the neighbors say? Richard continued, his voice growing louder. They ask about you. How's Marcus doing? They say. And what am I supposed to tell them? That my son is still finding himself at almost 30? I'm not finding myself, Marcus said, finally looking up to meet his father's eyes. I'm building something. There's a difference. Building what? Castles in the air? Richard's face flushed red. Your aunt called yesterday. She wanted to know if you'd consider a position at her accounting firm. Stable work, good benefits, a real future. But no, you're too proud for that. The rain intensified, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the Ohio sky. Marcus saved his work and slowly closed the laptop. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. He'd been up for 36 hours straight, fine-tuning the encryption protocols that could revolutionize military communication security. But how could he explain that to parents who measured success in salary figures and job titles? I'm not too proud, Marcus said, standing up. I have something I need to finish first. Always something, Richard muttered, turning away. Your grandmother would be ashamed. She sacrificed everything for this family to have opportunities, and you waste them. The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Marcus's grandmother had been his biggest supporter, the only one who understood his need to forge his own path. She'd passed away 2 years ago, but her absence still left a void in family gatherings. Linda moved between them, her face etched with worry lines that seemed to deepen with each family conflict. Both of you, please. It's Thanksgiving week. Can't we just what? Richard spun around. Pretend everything is fine? Pretend our son isn't throwing his life away? I won't do it anymore, Linda. I won't enable this failure. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Failure. Marcus had heard it whispered, implied, suggested, but never stated so bluntly. He felt something inside him crack, like ice under too much pressure. You want to know what failure looks like? Marcus's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with unshed tears. Failure is giving up on something you believe in just because it's hard. Failure is choosing safety over purpose. Failure is being 28 with nothing to show for it, Richard shouted. No career, no family, no future. Just promises and potential that never materialize. Richard? Linda's voice cracked with emotion. Marcus grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, his movements sharp and decisive. I need some air. Of course you do, Richard said bitterly. Run away. It's what you do best. I'm not running, Marcus said, pausing at the door. I'm choosing not to say things I'll regret. The only thing you should regret is wasting your life, Richard shot back. Marcus's hand tightened on the doorknob. For a moment, he considered telling them everything. About the Department of Defense contract he was competing for, about the late-night calls from Pentagon officials interested in his work, about the potential to save lives with his technology. But the words died in his throat. They wouldn't understand. They'd never understood. "I'm sorry I'm such a disappointment to you," Marcus said quietly, and then he was gone, stepping out into the cold November rain. The stairwell of the apartment building echoed with his footsteps as he descended. Each floor brought memories, carrying groceries for Mrs. Patterson on the third floor, helping Mr. Rodriguez fix his computer on the second, teaching the Kim children basic coding in the lobby. Small acts that meant nothing on a resume but everything to the people involved. Outside, the rain soaked through his jacket within minutes, but Marcus didn't care. He walked without destination, his mind replaying the conversation, dissecting each word, each accusation. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably his mother, trying to smooth things over. He ignored it. The streets of Columbus were nearly empty, most people smart enough to stay inside on such a miserable evening. Marcus found himself at the small park near the Veterans Memorial, a place he often came to think. The bronze soldiers stood at attention, rain streaming down their faces like tears. He sat on a wet bench, not caring about the discomfort. Tomorrow was Tuesday. He had a video conference with Colonel Morrison about the security protocols. The day after that, the preliminary testing results would come in. By the end of the week, he'd know if 2 years of work had been worth it. But tonight, all he felt was the weight of his family's disappointment. His phone rang again. This time, he looked at the screen. Jake's number. His friend must have gotten access to a satellite phone. Despite everything, Marcus smiled and answered. "Tell me you're not sitting in the rain feeling sorry for yourself." Jake's voice crackled through the connection. "How did you? It's Tuesday there, right? Your dad always gets extra philosophical on Tuesdays. Plus, I could hear the rain. You're at the memorial, aren't you?" Marcus laughed despite himself. "You know me too well." "I know you're an idiot who doesn't have enough sense to come in from the rain," Jake said, but his tone was warm. What was it this time? The job thing or the marriage thing? "The failure thing," Marcus said, watching the rain ripple in puddles around his feet. There was a pause on the line, filled with static and the weight of distance. "You know what we call failure over here?" Jake finally asked. "What?" "Not trying. That's it. That's the only failure that counts. Everything else is just process." Marcus closed his eyes, letting the rain wash over his face. "Tell that to my father." "I would, but I'm a little busy at the moment," Jake said, and Marcus could hear the smile in his voice. "Listen, I can't talk long, but I needed to tell you something. Remember that project you've been working on? The encryption thing? Yeah? Word travels fast in certain circles. Let's just say some very important people are very interested in what you're building. Don't give up now, Mark. Not when you're this close." "How do you—" "Gotta go," Jake interrupted. "But Marcus, your family loves you. They just don't know how to show it sometimes. And one day they're going to understand. Trust me on that." The line went dead, leaving Marcus alone with the rain and his thoughts. He stood up, water streaming from his clothes, and looked at the memorial one more time. The soldiers faced forward, resolute despite the storm. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Please come home. Your father didn't mean it. We love you." Marcus typed back, "I know. I love you too. I'll be home soon." As he walked back through the rain-soaked streets, Marcus thought about failure and success, about expectations and dreams, about the price of pursuing something others couldn't see. His family might think he was a failure now, but he wouldn't let that define him. Not tonight. Not ever. The apartment building loomed before him, windows glowing warmly against the dark sky. Somewhere up there, his parents were waiting, probably arguing about who was to blame for the fight. They loved him. He knew that. They just loved their idea of who he should be a little more. Marcus climbed the stairs slowly, each step a decision to face another day, another dispute, another moment of being misunderstood, but also another day closer to proving them wrong, not out of spite, but out of love. Because sometimes, the greatest gift you can give your family is becoming who you're meant to be, even when they can't see it yet. He paused outside the apartment door, taking a deep breath. Inside, he could hear his mother's voice, soft and worried. His father's heavy footsteps paced the living room. They were as trapped in their expectations as he was in his dreams. But traps could be broken, given time and patience. Marcus opened the door and stepped inside, water dripping onto the worn welcome mat. His mother rushed to him with a towel, fussing over his wet clothes. His father stood by the window, back rigid, staring out at the rain. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, not sure if he was apologizing for leaving or for being who he was. Richard turned slightly, his profile sharp against the window. Your friend Jake called the house phone after you left. Said to tell you the package would arrive soon. Said you'd understand. Marcus froze. Jake had called the house? That meant... He also said, Richard continued, his voice strange, that we should be proud of you. That you're doing important work. Work that matters. The room fell silent except for the rain against the windows. Linda looked between them, confusion clear on her face. Marcus's mind raced. Jake wouldn't have broken protocol unless... Dad, I don't understand your world. Marcus, Richard interrupted, finally turning to face him. Computers, encryption, whatever it is you do. But if Jake says it matters... He trailed off, 40 years of traditional expectations warring with the respect he held for military service. It does matter, Marcus said quietly. More than I can explain right now. Richard nodded slowly, the movement painful, like admitting a long-held position might be wrong. Then, finish what you started. But finish it soon. Your mother worries. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't acceptance. But it was a crack in the wall between them, and for tonight, that was enough. I will, Marcus promised, meaning it more than he'd ever meant anything. Linda handed him another towel, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You must be hungry. I saved you a plate from dinner. As she bustled to the kitchen, Marcus caught his father's eye. Richard nodded once, stiffly, then returned to his vigil by the window. The rain was beginning to slow, and somewhere above the clouds, stars waited to shine. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his laptop closed beside him, and ate his mother's cooking while she hovered nearby, adding more food to his plate whenever he took a bite. His father remained by the window, but his posture had softened, the rigid line of his shoulders easing slightly. They didn't speak of failure again that night, but Marcus knew the conversation wasn't over. It never was. The weight of disappointment still hung in the air, mixing with the smell of rain and reheated food. But something had shifted, subtle as the changing weather. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new arguments, new moments of doubt. But it would also bring him one day closer to showing them what he'd been building in silence and dedication. One day closer to the moment when understanding would dawn in their eyes. Marcus opened his laptop again, the code welcoming him back like an old friend. His parents exchanged glances but said nothing. Outside, the rain finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and ready for whatever came next. In the glow of the screen, surrounded by the quiet sounds of family life, Marcus returned to his work, not as a failure, not as a disappointment, but as a son following his own path, carrying the weight of their dreams alongside his own. The night stretched ahead, full of possibility and purpose, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled one last time, not as a threat, but as a promise of storms weathered and clearing skies ahead. 3 days had passed since the confrontation in the rain. The Chen apartment had settled into an uneasy routine. Polite conversations over breakfast, careful avoidance of sensitive topics, and Marcus working late into the night while his parents pretended not to notice. The tension remained, stretched thin like a wire ready to snap. It was Friday morning, the day before Thanksgiving, when everything changed. Marcus sat at his usual spot at the kitchen table, running his final diagnostic tests. The video conference with Colonel Morrison had gone better than expected. The preliminary results were promising. Everything he'd worked for was clicking into place, but the victory felt hollow without anyone to share it with. More coffee? Linda asked, already pouring before he could answer. She'd been extra attentive since Tuesday, her way of bridging the gap between father and son. Thanks, Mom. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. He'd been up most of the night implementing the Colonel's suggested modifications. The encryption protocol was now running at 97% efficiency, unheard of for this type of security system. Richard sat across from him, reading the morning paper with deliberate concentration. They'd managed 3 days of coexistence by simply not talking about anything that mattered. It was progress, of a sort. Your aunt called again, Linda said carefully, setting down a plate of scrambled eggs. About the position at her firm, she says it's still available if... The doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected in the morning quiet. All three of them looked up, surprised. It was 8:47 a.m. on the day before Thanksgiving. Not exactly prime visiting hours. I'll get it, Richard said, folding his newspaper with precise movements. Marcus heard the door open, then silence. Long silence. Too long. Richard? Linda called out, concern creeping into her voice. You need to come here. Richard's voice was strange, almost strangled. Marcus and Linda exchanged worried glances before hurrying to the door. What they saw made them both freeze. 10 soldiers stood in the hallway in perfect formation, their dress uniforms immaculate despite the early hour. Their shoes gleamed with military precision, and their faces were set in formal expressions. The neighbors' doors were cracking open, curious faces peering out at the unusual sight. The soldier at the front, a captain judging by his insignia, held a folded American flag. Marcus's heart stopped. Jake. Something had happened to Jake. "Mr. Marcus Chen?" the captain asked, his voice formal but gentle. "Yes," Marcus managed, his voice barely a whisper. His mother's hand found his arm, gripping tight. "Captain James Rodriguez, United States Army Cyber Command," the soldier said. Then, in a movement that defied everything Marcus expected, all 10 soldiers snapped to attention and saluted. Marcus stood frozen, uncomprehending. They were saluting him. Why were they saluting him? "Sir," Captain Rodriguez continued, maintaining the salute, "we're here on behalf of the United States Department of Defense to formally recognize your extraordinary service to our nation's security." The hallway seemed to spin. Richard's newspaper slipped from his fingers, scattering across the floor. Linda's grip on Marcus's arm tightened to the point of pain. I don't understand," Marcus stammered. Captain Rodriguez lowered his salute, and the others followed suit with mechanical precision. "Sir, your Cryptex encryption protocol has been classified as a critical defense asset. In the past 72 hours, it has prevented 17 separate cyber intrusion attempts on military infrastructure in the Middle East, saving an estimated 300 American lives." Mrs. Patterson from 3B had fully emerged from her apartment now, her mouth hanging open. Other neighbors crowded their doorways, phones appearing to capture the moment. "Your friend, Sergeant First Class Jake Morrison, has been using a field implementation of your protocol to secure communications for forward operating bases," the captain continued, "when enemy forces attempted to intercept and manipulate our communications 3 days ago. Your encryption held. Because of that, sir, entire units made it home safe." Marcus felt his knees go weak. Jake had been field testing his work. That's why he'd known about the military interest. That's why he'd called. Furthermore, Captain Rodriguez reached into his jacket and produced an envelope with the Department of Defense seal. "I've been authorized to present you with this letter of commendation from the Secretary of Defense, along with an offer of immediate commission as a civilian contractor with the highest security clearance." Richard made a sound that might have been a sob or a gasp. Linda's fingers dug into Marcus's arm as if she was afraid he might disappear. "But I haven't," Marcus struggled to form words. "Sir, you've been serving your country from this kitchen table," the captain said, a slight smile breaking through his formal demeanor. "The code you wrote saved my brother's unit 2 nights ago. He's stationed at the same fob as Sergeant Morrison. So this salute isn't just protocol, it's personal." One of the other soldiers, a young lieutenant, stepped forward slightly. "My fiancée is stationed in Kabul, sir. Your protocol kept her safe during an attempted breach yesterday. Thank you." Another soldier, tears glinting in her eyes. "My husband's convoy used your encrypted channels to avoid an ambush. He'll be home for Christmas because of you." One by one, the soldiers shared their connections, their gratitude, their personal stakes in Marcus's work. Each story hit like a physical blow, the weight of lives saved and families preserved. Richard stepped forward, his face pale and shocked. "My son did this? Your son is a hero." "Mr. Chen," Captain Rodriguez said firmly, "he's revolutionized military communication security. Conservative estimates suggest his work will save thousands of lives over the next decade." "But he never said?" Linda's voice was faint, overwhelmed. "I wasn't allowed to." Marcus finally found his voice. "The NDA, I couldn't talk about the military applications. I couldn't explain what I was really doing." "The failure," Richard whispered, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You let us call you a failure." "Sir," Captain Rodriguez addressed Richard directly, "your son has shown extraordinary dedication and sacrifice. He worked in isolation, without recognition, without being able to explain his purpose to anyone. That takes a special kind of courage." The captain turned back to Marcus. "Sergeant Morrison wanted us to deliver a message. He said to tell you, the package has arrived and it's even better than advertised. He also said you'd understand this." The captain pulled out a small device from his pocket, a prototype hardware encryption key that Marcus recognized as his own design. "He wanted you to know he carries this with him everywhere. Says it's his good luck charm." Marcus took the device with trembling hands. He'd built it in this very apartment, testing it at this kitchen table while his parents slept, while they worried he was wasting his life. "There's more," Captain Rodriguez said. "The DoD wants to implement your protocol system-wide. We're prepared to offer you a position leading the implementation team. The salary is substantial. But more importantly, You'll be directly responsible for protecting American forces worldwide. I need to sit down, Linda said faintly. Two soldiers immediately stepped forward to help her to the couch. Richard followed, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Marcus remained in the doorway, overwhelmed. Why the formal visit? Why not just send the offer? Captain Rodriguez smiled fully for the first time. Sergeant Morrison insisted. He said your family needed to see this, that they needed to understand who you really are. He was quite persuasive. That sounds like Jake. Marcus managed a weak smile. Also, the captain added, there's someone who wants to speak with you. He pulled out a military-grade satellite phone. If you're willing. Marcus took the phone with numb fingers. Hello? You magnificent bastard. Jake's voice came through clear and strong. I told you to trust me. Jake? Marcus's voice cracked. You could have told me you were using the protocol. And missed this moment? No way. Your dad there? Marcus looked at his father, who sat on the couch looking completely lost. Yeah, put me on speaker. Marcus did, and Jake's voice filled the apartment. Mr. Chen, sir, this is Sergeant First Class Jake Morrison. I wanted to personally tell you that your son has saved my life and the lives of my unit more times than I can count. He's the reason I'll make it home to see my daughter's first birthday. He's the reason 30 guys in my unit will see their families again. I know you value success and achievement. Well, sir, there's no greater achievement than what Marcus has done. No success more meaningful than saving lives. Richard's shoulders began to shake. Linda pulled him close, tears streaming down both their faces. Marcus never told us, Richard managed. He let us think, let us say terrible things. Because he's a hero, Jake said simply. Heroes don't do it for the recognition. They do it because it's right. You raised a good man, Mr. Chen. A man who chose purpose over pride, service over self. Be proud of him. We are. The connection crackled. I have to go, Jake said. But Marcus, check your email. And remember, process, not failure. You proved me right, brother. The line went dead. Marcus handed the phone back to Captain Rodriguez, who tucked it away before turning to address the growing crowd of neighbors in the hallway. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain announced, you're looking at an American hero. Marcus Chen's work in cybersecurity has protected our nation and saved countless lives. He did it without recognition, without praise, working alone in this building while maintaining absolute secrecy. He represents the best of what America can be. Spontaneous applause broke out. Mrs. Patterson was crying. Mr. Rodriguez shouted, That's my computer teacher. The Kim children jumped up and down with excitement. Captain Rodriguez turned back to Marcus. Sir, we'll need your answer about the position within 48 hours. But for now, he gestured to his soldiers, we wanted to make sure you had a Thanksgiving to remember. Wait, Marcus said as they prepared to leave. The flag? Ah, yes. Captain Rodriguez held up the folded flag. This flew over Forward Operating Base Morrison, named after Sergeant Morrison's father, who died in service. Jake wanted you to have it. He said you'd earned it as much as any soldier. Marcus accepted the flag with reverent hands. The weight of it, both physical and symbolic, settled into his chest. One more thing, the captain added. There's a car downstairs whenever you're ready. The Secretary of Defense would like to meet you personally. Today, if possible. But, he glanced at Marcus's parents. We understand if you need time with your family first. Yes, time, please. Marcus's voice was barely functional. Of course. Captain Rodriguez stepped back. Ladies and gentlemen, 10 Hut. The soldiers snapped to attention once more, their synchronization perfect. Present arms. 10 hands rose in salute. This time, Marcus managed to raise his own hand in response. The gesture awkward but heartfelt. Order arms! The salutes dropped. About face! As one, the soldiers turned. Forward march! They filed out in perfect formation, leaving behind a hallway full of stunned neighbors and a family forever changed. The apartment door closed, and silence descended. Marcus still held the flag and the encryption device, standing in the entryway like he'd forgotten how to move. His parents sat on the couch, staring at him as if seeing him for the first time. All this time, Richard's voice was broken, raw. All this time you were... I'm sorry, Marcus said. I wanted to tell you. So many times I wanted to explain. Richard stood abruptly, crossing the room in 3 quick strides. Marcus braced himself, unsure what to expect. Then his father's arms were around him, pulling him into the first hug they'd shared in years. My son, Richard whispered, his voice thick with emotion. My son, the hero, and I called you... Dad, don't, Marcus said, returning the embrace. You didn't know, but I should have trusted you. Richard pulled back, his eyes red. I should have believed in you even without knowing. That's what fathers do. Linda joined them, the three of them standing in a tight circle, the weight of misunderstanding finally lifting. The neighbors will never let us hear the end of this, Linda said through her tears, and despite everything, they laughed. Marcus's phone buzzed. The email from Jake. He opened it to find a collection of photos. Soldiers at computers, using equipment Marcus recognized as running his protocols. Smiling faces, thumbs up, handwritten signs saying, "Thank you, Marcus," and Chen's code saves lives. At the bottom, a simple message. "Every face here has a family that will see them again because of you. Happy Thanksgiving, brother." "I need to show you something," Marcus said, leading his parents to the kitchen table. He opened his laptop, pulling up the classified sections he was now authorized to share. "This is what I've been building." For the next hour, he explained everything. The late nights, the breakthrough moments, the crushing defeats, and eventual triumph. His parents listened with rapt attention, asking questions, finally understanding the scope of what their son had achieved. "The job at the bank," Linda said suddenly. "You left to do this?" "I had to," Marcus said. "Once I realized what was possible, what it could mean, I couldn't do anything else." "And we made your life hell for it," Richard said, shaking his head. "Every family dinner, every phone call, pushing you toward something safe and stable when you were building something extraordinary. You wanted what was best for me," Marcus said. "You always have. We just had different definitions of best." Richard picked up the folded flag, running his fingers over the fabric. "Your grandmother would be so proud. She always said you were special, that you saw the world differently. We thought it was just grandmother talk." "She knew," Marcus said softly. "Somehow, she always knew." The morning sun had fully risen now, streaming through the windows and illuminating the small apartment. The same walls that had witnessed so many arguments, so much disappointment, now held a different energy entirely. "The Secretary of Defense," Linda said wonderingly. "My son is meeting with the Secretary of Defense." "I should go," Marcus said, though part of him wanted to stay in this moment forever. "They're waiting." "We'll come with you," Richard said immediately. "Dad, I don't think—" "Not to the meeting," Richard clarified. "But we'll drive you. Our son isn't taking a government car to the Pentagon. His parents will take him. Like we should have been taking him all along." Marcus felt his throat close with emotion. "Okay." As they prepared to leave, neighbors kept knocking, wanting to congratulate Marcus, to share their amazement. Mrs. Patterson brought cookies. Mr. Rodriguez shook Marcus's hand so long his arm went numb. The Kim children asked if he was going to be in the movies now. "The whole building's going to be talking about this for years," Linda said, not unhappily. "Let them talk," Richard said, his arm around Marcus's shoulders. "Let everyone know that Marcus Chen, my son, saved lives, that he sacrificed and worked and never gave up, even when his own father—" He stopped, unable to continue. "Dad," Marcus said firmly, "we're past that now. All of it. We move forward from here." Richard nodded, composing himself. "Forward. Yes. Together." As they walked to the car, Marcus's phone rang. Colonel Morrison's direct line. "Sir?" Marcus answered. "Son, I just heard about the visit from Captain Rodriguez. I wanted to add my personal thanks. Also, when you get to the Pentagon, ask for Operation Fibonacci. That's the code name for the full implementation. Your code name, by the way. Figured you'd appreciate the mathematical reference. Thank you, sir, for everything." "No, Mr. Chen. Thank you. See you soon." The drive to the Pentagon was surreal. Richard kept reaching over to squeeze Marcus's shoulder, as if reassuring himself his son was real. Linda called relatives, her voice proud and excited, sharing the news with everyone who had ever asked about her unsuccessful younger son. "Aunt Patricia is crying," she reported. "She says she's withdrawing the job offer and wants to know if you're hiring instead." They laughed, the sound bright and healing in the confined space of the car. As they approached the Pentagon, the massive building looming before them, Richard pulled over. "Marcus," he said, turning in his seat, "I know I can't take back the things I said, the disappointment I showed, but I want you to know, moving forward, that I have never been prouder of anyone in my entire life. You didn't just succeed. You succeeded while carrying our doubts, our pressure, our lack of faith. That's strength I didn't know existed. We love you," Linda added. "We've always loved you. We just forgot to love who you are instead of who we thought you should be." Marcus reached forward,